I'd like to introduce Nellie. Nellie Kurz grew up in Falmouth. Her formal education started at the Woods Hole Child Center and continued in the public schools. She enjoyed the Children's School of Science. She participated very often in the Woods Hole May Festival. And she's enjoyed science tours at Hui with her dad. She went to college at the Maryland Institute of Art in Baltimore, Maryland, where she received a BFA in textile arts, in fiber and textile arts. Upon graduation, unsure of her career options for a fiber artist, she took an internship in the costume shop at the Regional Theater of Baltimore, Center Stage. It turns out theatrical costuming is a good place for a teen-oriented fiber artist to end up. She fit right in, fell a little bit in love with the process. And from there, Nellie went on to work 5 seasons at the Santa Fe Opera Company, 3 seasons making armor, belts, and jewelry in the crafts department, and 2 seasons making turbans, crowns, and fedoras in the millinery department. The opera dominated her summers, and the rest of the year she lived in Chicago, where she worked at many different theaters, including the Hubbard Street Dance Company, the Goodman Theater, the Emerald City Children's Theater, and Northwestern University's theater department. In 2011, she decided to go back to school to hone her pattern making and draping skills. So she attended the University of Texas at Austin, graduating with a master's in costume technology in 2014. She was offered a position at the Boston Ballet, where she has worked for the last 3 years. Nellie has made bullheads, I'm not sure what they are, maybe they are bullheads, lizard men costumes, leather armor, and chainmail. Very interesting. She made face casts, fish suits, latex masks, and many, many hats. Now she's happy to work at the Boston Ballet, where she can focus her skills. In her free time, she enjoys a variety of textile arts, such as block printing and embroidery, as well as reading science fiction novels, watching Star Trek, and lots of bike riding. Please welcome Nellie Kurz.
I think I'm good. Oh, I'm on. In case you need water. Oh, thank you. Okay. Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored to participate in the Lassalle dance series. So, thank you so much for having this. Hi. And welcome to my presentation, Too Much Inside a Ballet Costume Shop.
Oh, that's funny.
So today, just a word about my very narrow focus. I'm just in the costume shop. I worked there for 3 years. There are so many different aspects of dance, and I can really only speak to just this one part, just what the dancers wear on their bodies. So that's what I'm going to talk about. I'm not even going to go into the shoes. I can maybe send someone down to talk about that next year. So I'm going to walk you through what everyone does in the costume shop, and I'm going to show you a lot of behind-the-scenes pictures, and then I'm going to direct you to some features of these tutus that I brought with me. Am I still on?
Yeah, I just want to get the feedback.
Okay.
Can you still hear Nellie?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right. So just a word about the pictures that I'm going to show you. Some of these pictures are mine, some belong to the Boston Ballet, some are from the dancers' Instagrams, some come from the Boston Globe. Please don't take pictures yourself and get me in trouble by using them for non-educational purposes. That's all I ask. All right. So, and at the end, I will open up and you guys can ask any questions that you may have. All right. So, where do we get these amazing tutus, right? It's very mysterious. There are 12 of us who work in the costume shop full-time. Full-time people who just sit there. This is my friend Ezra. Now, not one of these 12 people is a costume designer. We have no full-time costume designers. This is the most common misconception about my job and about all of our job. The designer is important for sure. So what the designer does is creates these images, right? Every costume starts out as an image, as an idea. So these are Odette and Odile from Swan Lake, designed by Robert Perziola. So you saw principal dancer Ashley Ellis wearing the Odette tutu in the first slide, so you can see the drawing and how it was realized. So they have to make these types of drawings for every character that's in the ballet. So it's not an insignificant amount of work. And this is the kind of thing that they produce. They have the drawing, and then they have to source all of the fabric. So they tell us what we are going to make the costume out of. So they make these Bibles like you see here. And here's another one. This is from Lassalle feed, which we're doing this coming season. So you can see their drawing is here, and then what we use to make it is on the other side. So all of these questions, what fabric, what color, what kind of leotard, how long the tutu is, what kind of dagging, how the dancers wear their hair, all of these questions, like what is it, what does it look like, these are all decided by the designer, not by us. We don't decide that. And even the core people, you know, they have to do these drawings and tell us what fabric it is. But the designer only comes into the shop and interacts with us a few times, and only on particular shows. Once all the costume decisions are made and the fabric is bought, we just do it. Like, they don't have to come there that much, and sometimes they don't come at all. So David Walker, the designer for Sleeping Beauty, this bluebird here, he's dead, and we don't even have a Bible. So this is what we got, like with it, is just this pile of fabric. So it's really just guesswork. Like we work with, you know, people who may have seen the show and with the choreographer to sort of decide to make those decisions, and sometimes we just make them. But I actually like that better. I like not being on the hook for making those decisions. And I think one of the reasons that we are often mistaken for designers is that design is the only part of the process that we see in popular culture, right? All of the nitty-gritty labor of making the clothes that we all wear takes place overseas now, unless it's very specialized, like what we do. And that's why it's so cool to work at the ballet. So we are costume technicians, not costume designers. So technical, all right? And I think that's more, to me, that's more fun, is the actual making of it. All right, so where do we even start? Like we have the drawing, we know what it's supposed to look like, and we have the fabric. So the draper makes the pattern. And this is a really, so some of you have seen home sewing patterns. And we have to make our own because you can't go out and buy a pattern for this. Like you have to make it yourself. So this is a really hard part of the process to visualize. So I actually brought some patterns with me to show you guys. I don't know how easy this is to see, but these like 5 pieces of paper right here with all these little holes in them. All right? Want to see this? Yeah. Yeah. This is this. This is the pattern for this tutu right here. And you can see it's like pretty tricky, right? All these little holes. So this shows us, okay, that's how that goes. That goes together like that, right? It's fine. And this is the pattern for tutu knickers. So this shows you where each row of this tulle goes on. So this goes right on the dancer like that, right? Devilishly tricky. And this is a tutu basque, also called a yoke. And even within the realm of classical ballet, where there's not much variation in size, right? Not like opera. You can see there's a huge variation in shape, right? Each of these has to be different for each dancer. So there's that and that. And then I also brought a tights pattern because I think they're kind of fun. Yeah, and it looks super weird, especially because it's a stretch pattern. So down here, what these notches are telling me is that as I sew this, I need to stretch this little piece here to make the foot. So it's crazy, right? All right, so I think it's pretty clear that a draper has to be like a master draftsperson, like an architect, like someone who can see a flat shape and translate it into the 3D and then back again, and just how does everything interact with each other? How does the grain of the fabric interact? Do we need stretch? Where? How much? How do we accommodate different sizes in the same costume? So it's like I'm moving this so you can see the tutu better. So the other part of the draper, that's my boss, Lisa. She would be so embarrassed if she knew. The other part of the draper's job is fitting. So we're always making these muslins, you can see here. This is not a real costume, this is practice fabric. So we're always fitting the dancers because the dancer is the most important part of these costumes. They have to dance in this, it's crazy. And then we take this and we go back and we modify the pattern. And it's just, here I have some more pictures of, so you can see this is a nymph costume. And you can see, I actually took these pictures for Lisa so she could see what she needed to do on them. But you can see how much detail we get in there. And this is a men's costume actually. And we spend a lot of time messing with the hem on them. How much of their butt is going to be revealed? This is like a huge question that we have to sort out all the time. But yeah, it's not just the women who get our attention. Also the men get a lot of fittings too. So you guys all have those jeans that fit you just right, or that shirt that makes you feel good. This fit is because of the pattern. Whoever made that pattern in Bangladesh or Cambodia or whatever, through some trick of fate, it fits you. So we have the advantage of being able to fit it right on people who are wearing it. So these are highly specialized, customized garments. Okay. So once you make the pattern, you have to then translate it into this. And that's my job. Okay, so there's me cutting out a pair of tights. So my job is first hand or cutter. So the most basic part of my job is that once we have the pattern, I cut it out of fabric. Most basic. Sometimes it means that I'm the first person taking a pair of scissors to $100 a yard fabric. But a lot of my job is actually engineering. Like, what is the best way to make something? What is the best series of steps? I have a friend who jokingly calls me the hand of the king. And my counterpart in the shop, the other first hand, she calls herself the muscle. So the first hand is the one who prototypes everything, makes samples, solve problems, and just make sure everything goes really smoothly. So I have some examples in my PowerPoint. So this is that nymph bodice that you saw us fitting earlier. And I like this picture because you can see this mock-up here that we like drew all over right from the fitting. And then here's the pattern, and then here's the old one, and here's me working on the new one and being like, how am I gonna make this all come together? Nice picture. And there it is on the form. Look. So there you can see our workplace. This is our whole team. There's the Draper Lisa. There's me. There's our stitcher Becky. And it's a mess. I'm sorry. So this, again, the men's costumes, which get a little neglected because, I mean, look at the women. But, I mean, these are the mazurka men. And so you can see that now that she's marked the center front, it's my job to get in there and like, okay, how are we going to make 14 of these? So here's the big stack that I have of everyone's costumes. All right, so this is like a really engineering problem. Has anyone here seen the vertiginous thrill of exactitude, the ballet? No, no one has. It has these crazy flying saucer tutus in it that just stick straight out. And so they were like, we're doing this ballet, and we were like, how are we gonna make that? So we ended up using window screening and fiberglass rod and like a lot of foam. And it was really complicated, and it took the whole team to do it. So here's me sewing on a very old machine, which is the only machine that was wide enough that I could get it under there and not crumple the fiberglass rod. And there you can see all the series of like circles that we had to put together to make it. But look, it's perfect. You'd never know. Let's see. What's next? Oh, okay. All right. So this is a piece called Smoke and Mirrors. And so this is a tricky piece because it has to look like they're wearing like nothing, right? It's not supposed to look like much, but this it looks like nondescript. But you can see they have these handles on the side of their costume, and they were actually being like kind of pulled and like thrown on stage by their costume. It's hard to find a picture of it, so I brought a little video, and my dad is going to play it for you so you can see what these costumes actually did in motion if he can. So these are, can you do it? Good. Yeah.
Good.
So to figure out how to do this without like injuring anyone was a challenge. Yeah, and those are some of our soloist dancers, Matthew Slattery and Raquel Biriassi from Australia and Italy, respectively. All right, so, once everything is cut and figured out, it's up to the stitchers to put everything together. So stitchers are like the battlefield soldiers. They are our true technicians. They have to be exacting and meticulous with an almost insane attention to detail and just a huge amount of patience. They touch everything in the shop over and over and over again. Everything that you see. So this you don't get fabric that looks like this, right? Like it doesn't just come like that. So I mean, we have like all of this. I mean, this is like layers of stuff here. This is machine sewed on, and then we came in and hand sewed all this other stuff on, and this trim was made separately. And someone had to come in and grommet those. You know, like it's really detail work. Oh, and we also there's a lot of understructure creation. And one of the things that we're really careful about at the ballet is that everything looks beautiful through all the layers. So even though no one is ever going to see this, you can see that my stitcher put lace over every layer of ruffles. So nothing would stick out, and if she was being partnered, which she wasn't even being partnered, nothing would scratch anyone's hand, you know. So, and there you can see, it's also to get that perfect bell shape that you can see on these four dancers. This is in pas de quatre. Has anyone seen that? Okay. I'm probably saying it wrong. It's French. Anyway, this is also, so there are four dancers on stage here, right? So in ballet, there's a lot of repetition, right? In Swan Lake, there's the swans. In Nutcracker, there's the snow corps. So we have to make a lot of the same thing sometimes. And even though there are only 4 people on stage, because they're dancing in these costumes to keep them in good shape, we actually made 12 of them. So for different dancers, we're doing it on different nights, and just to prolong the life of the show, because if you're sweating in these, yeah. So, some repetition. Sometimes everyone needs the same thing, but in a different color. Yeah. And you know, you also have to think about the labor hours as well. So a tutu takes, on average, 30 to 40 hours to put together, and that's just the amount of time that it takes. Like, there's no getting around that. There are no shortcuts. We can assembly line some things, but it is what it is. This is my stitcher, Becky. And she's just preparing each layer to go onto the tutu. And you can see she's got the bin there of ones she hasn't done yet, and like the 3 layers over there that she has done. So it takes a long time. Let's see. So to be, and you can see, we have all these tutus up. There are only, 2 of those people on stage at once. So to be any of the jobs in the costume shop, you have to start out as a stitcher. That's where everyone starts. That's where I started. And at the end of the day, we all end up stitchers again, because there's nothing left to do once you've done all this stuff other than put the clothes together. You just have to do it. Yeah. So to review, each team has a draper who makes the patterns, a first hand who cuts them out, and 1 or 2 stitchers, who puts them all together. Okay, but wait, there's more. While we're doing all of this, there's a whole other team, the crafts team. So colorful. They dye and paint fabric and tights to be the right color. Almost nothing is ever the right color. Crafts also works on anything that goes on the body that isn't a traditional garment. So all of those fantastic ballet tiaras, the mouse heads in Nutcracker, the Nutcracker head itself, any hats that anyone wears, armor, anything like that, Crafts works on. So these are the shoes and tights that our dyer Shane made for a new piece choreographed by Carol Armitage. And so he had this whole setup. You can see in the next picture where he would ombre dye the tights. That's Shane. He He would ombre dye the tights, and then he would paint them on these legs he had hanging from the ceiling, so the paint would like drip down. So this is like a pretty fun project for him. I really liked it. You can see them on stage there. It's very striking. But usually he gets stuff like, can you make this elastic match? You know, like these tights are the wrong color. You know, he usually gets stuff like that. See, and also here he is painting that nymph bodice I was working on. So he's got the old one that he's looking at there. He's got the new one there. And I mean, he's so good at his job, you can't tell. You can't tell what it is. The other thing that he has to do is keep really good track of his dye recipes. Because if we ever do the show again, he'll need to recreate all of the colors that he made. So I really like his cards. Okay, so the jewelry. All right, so there are like some really special challenges in jewelry for the ballet. You have to make sure that the tiara stays on the dancers' heads while she's jumping around, or that her necklace doesn't flip up and hit the guy she's dancing with. So I brought a tiara and a necklace to show you so you can see. I'll start with the necklace. So from the audience, it probably just looks like a beautiful sparkly doodad that she's wearing, but from up close, it's got these crazy elastic, right? So it hooks to her bodice, so it stays down, so it doesn't like hit anyone in the face while she's dancing. It's also made out of, it's like there's not really any metal in it. It's just beads sewn onto this piece of like stretchy mesh. So it's really a different thing than you think it's going to be if you're watching the show. I don't know if anyone here has danced before and worn something like this. Probably a few of you have, but it's not traditional jewelry. And then the tiaras have to be built sort of so that you can kind of throw them and they'll be okay. So they're made out of wire, and then all of the sharp edges on it, and when you come up and look at this after, you can see it's all covered with plastic that's painted to match so that there's no pointy edges on it that's going to catch on anything. It's a huge problem when everyone's got tulle, like everywhere it's catches on everything. And it also has these horsehair bands, and that's what we use to actually like affix it to their head. Because it gives you a really wide area so you can put a lot of pins in there. It used to be actually made out of horsehair, but it's plastic now. And the other thing that this tells us is that where the tiara goes, because ballet dancers, for whatever reason, love to wear their headpieces upside down and backwards. I think they just they're at the theater and they're like, I think it looks better like this. And you're like, no, what? So we're trying to avoid that, but sometimes people go up. So these are the Black Swan headpieces that our lovely craftsperson Erica made. There's another shot of them. We use a lot of jewels in the crafts. All right, and I included this next series of pictures because I think it's a really nice way to see how the whole thing comes together. Like Crafts made this beautiful necklace and these really cool bug-like headpieces that they made. And my team made these capes and these like really beautiful dresses. So, and this is just the queen and her entourage. They don't even dance. But I think they came together really beautifully, and they're, So, it's opening night. All the costumes leave. Our wardrobe crew goes with them. We don't all go with them. Just two people go to the theater with the costumes to make sure they're okay. So as you might be able to tell, all of this is fantastically expensive. Did anyone see Swan Lake at the Boston Ballet? You guys did. Yeah. Okay, so this tutu that the Black Swan wears, that's encrusted in like 10 million Swarovski crystals, is insured for $75,000. Like this is an expensive proposition to make new costumes. No one wants to make new costumes because of this. But look at how beautiful. It's so beautiful. If anyone has any extra money, we can make really, really beautiful, beautiful things if you give us money. So we spend a lot of time fixing up old costumes. And we rent costumes, and some people rent our costumes. The Sleeping Beauty that we have, here are the nymphs fitting in it, and you can't even tell which one is the new one, can you? And we try and take really good care of our costumes. So this was built in 1974. It's pretty old, but it still looks pretty good for people dancing in it every day. You can't tell that some of these costumes are 40 years older than the ballerinas. And you can see how many different people have worn these costumes. And when you come up to look at these tutus, you'll be able to see like just how many different dancers they've had to accommodate just by looking at the backs. So it's really heartbreaking when you see a costume that hasn't been well taken care of. A lot of ballet companies don't have the staff to properly care for the costumes they do have. And that's actually something that we're known for within the biz of the Boston Ballet, is that we're thought of as the costume spa. Like when people rent us shows, they always get them back in better condition. It's just because we have the staff for it. It's only 12 people, but most places can't afford that. So, yeah, look how nice. So this is this tutu, one of our soloist dancers, Jiyoung Che, wearing it. All right, so let's take a look like inside some of the tutus. All right, so every tutu has 3 parts to it. Some of you may have known this. They have the bodice here, which I've talked about a lot, the basque or yoke right here, and then the knicker, which is this under here, that all of these layers of fluff have sewn to it. And I brought you, where is it? I brought you a naked knicker. So this is what this looks like before we sew any of those layers of tulle on it. So something like this is underneath all of these. Yeah. So there were a couple of other things I wanted to draw your attention to. Okay, so tutus, like anything, they go through trends. So you can see on this one, the basque is exposed down here, and on all of these actually, on this one too, you can see the basque. But on this, the newer tutu, the bodice goes all the way down to the skirt. Yeah, so that's what's in right now. I'm not as into it. I think this is more flattering and also easy to fit, but that's just me. Not my decision to make. Okay, so elastic is the other thing I wanted to draw your attention to. You can see on my image here, this is from Pas de Quatre again. You can see how much elastic is on the inside of these costumes. And if you come over here and look at these, there's elastic everywhere. There's elastic in the basque, cinching it in. There's elastic on the shoulders, holding it up. This one even has elastic in the armpit. Just to hold that in. So that's something we do a lot of. There's mesh insets in them. Keep that in. So that's one of the most common, easiest things that we do for these tutus. Also, I should introduce them. I just realized I hadn't. This is the Bluebird from Sleeping Beauty, as designed by David Walker. It's kind of the best part of the ballet. The Bluebird pas de deux. I don't know if anyone's seen it. This is the Sugar Plum.
Can you hold it up a little here?
It's like it's sleeping.
This is my favorite one. And this is the Sugar Plum Fairy from our production of the Nutcracker, built in 2010. And actually this is a costume that was made especially for educational purposes. So it has not been worn ever by a ballerina. So you can compare this one to something like this, and you can see the difference. So it's a good way to see something that's fresh off the line versus something that isn't. And this is the Black Swan from our old production. I couldn't bring the new Black Swan for obvious reasons, but and I think, and you can really see how much this one has been worn. I think this was built sometime in the 80s or 90s. And this is from a Balanchine piece that I've actually never seen, and I have no idea what the piece was, but it's so pretty, so I brought it. Yeah, she's got jewel sleeves. All right, so there were a few other things I wanted to point out on those tutus. Oh, the boning, yes. So you can see on my cutaway diagram, there are these channels here. those have spiral bones in them that keeps the bodice up. They're made of metal, but because they're spiral, they're really bendy. You see here? So the dancer doesn't actually like cut herself on them, but we really need those. And that video that I showed you of the dancer getting like pulled by her handles, we couldn't have done that without spiral boning. It's really helpful to keep the whole thing up. Boning. What else? Oh, flatlining. So, and you'll see too that a lot of these, I know it sounds like a medical term, but it isn't. And in fact, the first time someone said that to me, I was like, who's dying? Flatlining? Oh my God. No, it's actually putting two pieces of fabric together. So when you come up and look at these, you'll see that each has 2 layers of fabric. There's the fashion fabric on the outside, and there's a stiffer piece of fabric in the back. We usually use a twill weave coutil, but what we've been doing recently, and what you'll see on this one, is we've actually been using this really intense fabric called stiff stuff, which is actually just like cardboard here in the front, which is great. You should all come over and touch it. All right, and so there's also, I want to show you the tutu hoop. So on each of these, there's actually a metal hoop right here. I don't know if you can even see it because it's hidden in there in the layers of tulle, but you can feel it. And that keeps it out. And this is actually one of the most common things that the dancers break. Yeah, and so the thing that's keeping this all together is the tacking, the tutu tacking, and it's these big stitches that maybe you can see going all the way around. And that actually might even be the most time-consuming thing out of all of these time-consuming processes that I showed you. This is probably one of the most time-consuming ones. So one of the other things that we might do to preserve some of our older tutus is we might cut all of this tacking, open it up, and on the panty on the inside, sew on another layer of tulle, just to keep the whole thing like puffy and like fresh. And then we have to retack the whole thing. So even the upkeep is a huge process. Oh, labels. The other thing about this that's kind of fun is you can see everyone who's worn these if you come over and look at them. Which is kind of nice, a nice way to track the progress of it, in addition to the huge amount, I don't know if you can see that, the huge amount of bars on the back. The burrito setting, in case they had dinner before. And also the jewels. Okay, so like the jeweling is like the best part, right? Sewing jewels and stuff on these guys. We all fight over it in the shop when it's time to do it. So you'll see on this one, on this old one, these are all hand sewn on, which is great, you know, they're definitely stuck on there. But what we've been doing recently is that Swarovski makes a heat set jewel. So on this tutu, none of these are sewn on. These have all been heated on. So we have a panini press in the shop that we actually use to get all of these on. And we do that before the tutu is together, right? When it's sort of in its early stages. That's when we press all of these jewels on. So, all right. I believe that is it. I hope it wasn't too much. Also, it's Mike Fishbine's birthday today, and I know he's who you all think of when you think of tutus. So, if anyone has any questions, I would also like to invite you up to look at the tutus. Now, at the Woods Hole Aquarium, they ask everyone to employ a 2-finger touch when they touch in the tank of little creatures, and I'd sort of like us to observe the similar rules, like let's be gentle and use, 2-finger touch. That's okay with everyone. And my dad will get you if you, if he sees you try to put one on. Right. Any questions, Carol?
Cleaning.
Oh, what about cleaning? Yes. All right. So that's hard sometimes. Sometimes all we do is we take the tutu and we just dunk this part in water, just like that. Sometimes we'll take the bodice off and take the hoop out, and we'll put the whole thing in the washing machine. Some of them we just take to the dry cleaners. So it depends on the costume. Like this one will probably just clean like that. It's older. That black swan has the look of one that's definitely been in the washing machine. Yeah, so it depends on the costume, you know. Yes, in the back.
Can you talk a little bit about the wear and tear of the costumes when they do partnering?
When they do partnering, yeah, it's rough. Actually, let's see. So I think you can actually really see that on this black swan one here, where the silk is kind of all ripped away right here, where you can see her partner has been grabbing her to lift her up. There's not much we can do about that. There is, actually, I find that the problems with partnerings come more from the men's costumes, really, than the women's. Because the men have been training to, like, with rehearsal tutus, to lift them up and, you know, be good at doing that with the hoop and everything, dealing with it. But when they get into the theater, they have on costumes that are covered in crap, you know, and they're like, oh, I don't know, she's stuck on me, you know, and you're sort of like, oh, I'm sorry, God. So, and definitely in our production of Sleeping Beauty, did anyone see that? That's fine, it's terrible. No, it's great, actually. There are parts of it that are really great. I had to sit through it a few too many times. Those costumes all have actually, puff paint on them. Yeah, it's horrible, because when it was made in 1974, puff paint was like the hot new thing. They didn't know what we now know, which is that it's gross, and it's actually, because it's so old, it's flaking off. And so they would actually get stuck to each other on the puff paint, like the jagged puff paint. And it's really funny. It was really funny until it started to actually cut the ballerinas, and then we were like, all right. So we actually had to cover all of it with net, with a layer of net. So we do what we can. All right. Oh, the birthday boy, I guess, should go first.
Do you have to go to all the shows, or do you have to make adjustments during the show in case there's a problem with one of the costumes?
Oh, okay. So I don't have to go to all of the shows. The wardrobe crew goes to all of the shows. But I do have to watch rehearsal, and if something goes wrong in rehearsal, then I am on the line. Once it opens, not my problem. Yeah. Yeah. Oh no. Okay, I'm gonna go around. Like, what's your?
Typically, how many shows get new costumes in a season?
Oh, it all depends on how much money they give us. Yeah. This season, I think we're doing 3 new ones, but they're all ballets that are leotards. And so we're all kind of like, oh, fine. But yeah, we kind of are like, can we make Cinderella? Like, and they're like, no, we don't have any money. And we're like, but Cinderella. So it really depends on the money that we have. Yes.
How would you rate the quality of your preparation in both undergrad and grad school for this job?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think that, formal schooling is great in such a team-oriented process as this, the best preparation is having a good personality. I think that anyone who wants to can learn this stuff. You just have to be dedicated to it. What matters most is if we can work with you. Like, I can teach anyone to do this if you have the time and if you have the patience. But if you're kind of a loser, I don't want to work with you. Is that too candid? Miss Lassalle in the back.
Can you tell us about new kinds of material? One year it's nylon and next year it's something else, and the positive changes that can happen to the way you dress someone or what they can do when they dance.
Oh yes, I would say the most positive change is stretch, for sure. I have actually a very old ballet book that was written in the 20s about making ballet costumes, and they have in there a knitting pattern for a leotard. And I was like, oh no. So something that actually you'll see a lot of ballet companies now do is in their tutus, they'll incorporate a stretch panel here. None of these have that, I think, just because the dancers didn't need them, but we incorporate a lot of stretch panels. But other than that, I would say that I'm kind of a traditionalist. Like, I like the old, aside from the panini press things, I don't want to have to sew on all those jewels. The panini press is great. Yeah, I think that the older materials are best. It's actually becoming kind of an issue with certain things, companies not making them anymore. Certain kinds of net and nylons and things like that.
Do you have to consider the weight of all these materials? And
Oh no, the dancers have to deal with it, yeah. Yeah, no, actually, especially for like the chorus people, like the king costume and the queen costumes for any show, really, they weigh 30, 40 pounds. But no one who actually has to dance wears a costume like that. That's usually the people in the background who are like, I'm here looking fabulous, I'm the queen, it's time to get married, you know. It's those people who have the really heavy costumes, but yeah. Okay, that's it.
Me?
Yeah, I get.
Okay. Where do you source the or where does one source the fabric?
Oh, it's
and the jewels. Is
it's
all over the world, or?
It's devilishly tricky. It's actually, I have very little to do with that, so I will answer as best I can. But it seems to me like it's really hard. And there's no place in Boston anymore. All the fabric stores have basically gone out of business, and it's pretty rough. So we order a lot of stuff. There was one time when we were waiting for like 6 weeks for like really special elastic to come from Germany. I don't know. So that's why we end up dyeing a lot of stuff, right?
So do you have a buyer? Is that another job?
Yeah, we do. Our buyer and our shoe person are sort of the same person. So yeah. Oh.
Wow.
And right behind you.
So with the jewels that you get to panini press on, do you
Yeah.
have any creative license with that, or is it very detailed from the designer's drawings?
Oh, it depends so much on the designer. Yeah, for this the designer is dead, so I can do whatever I want. For this one, actually the designer is insane, and if it's off an 1/8 of an inch, he'll know. A 1/16, he'll know. And he actually does detailed flats, like detailed drawings of how each jewel goes on, and you have to follow those exactly. But usually it's somewhere in the middle. Usually they're like, I want it to look like this. Oh, that's great. You know, you do a little bit and you show them, and they're like, oh, that's great. But yeah, so those are two extremes.
When you're putting in the elastic panels, are those following the lines of the boning? Like, are they to stretch this way? The elastic panels that you were talking about, or are they to stretch?
They're always the stretch goes around the body. And I've been putting elastic panels in a lot of things in Sleeping Beauty because it's from the 70s, and dancers have actually really changed since then, especially the men. It's mostly the men that I'm adding stretch panels into because I feel that male dancers in the 70s, they didn't have any biceps. I don't know why. And they really have those now. And so like it's a kind of a weird thing, but I'm putting like stretch in there. Anyway, does that answer your question? Okay.
So I was following on that, how do you fit for each dancer, and how do you, by fitting, how do you not sort of demolish something that's built in 1974, how does it manage to go through all those different dancers without being destroyed?
Oh, well, we walk a fine line, good sir. Well, and this is also why we like to have shows that have like a lot of duplicates, and why when we're making new shows, we always make a bunch in a bunch of different sizes, so that hopefully, you know, future me is like, oh, this will fit you, you know, like 30 years, right? Like, so, and that's what's so great actually about Sleeping Beauty is there are a lot of costumes, right? This is one of 6 bluebirds, which is great. And if we get to the point, right, which is now going back to the nymphs, since we had to make 4 new ones because our dancers now, the women are getting taller. So it's easy to make new ones too, and that's why sometimes we do that. Is that okay? Oh, fine.
Are your dancers better than most about
Yeah.
not drinking coffee or having a taco before they go on to performance in uniform?
Just like an aside about the Boston Ballet dancers, they are the best in the country. They're better than anyone in New York. They're the best. Like, I'm not biased.
They follow rules though. They don't drink in costumes and stuff like that.
If they do, I don't see it, so
You don't have to
it's
clean
not
it up.
happening.
Okay.
Yeah.
What kind of an acknowledgement do you get after the performance?
Oh, nothing. I can.
Because in the movies you have.
I'm in the program. You can see me. I'm on the very back page. The font is very small. But that's okay. It doesn't
That's
matter.
really unfair.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Do you ever encounter dancers who are allergic to the costumes and break out
Yes.
into hives that are different?
Yes, it's horrible. Oh my God. Yeah. There's not really a lot we can do about that. We sometimes will ask them to wear leotards underneath, or yeah, something like that. Yes. Sorry.
For Nutcracker, do you like reuse costumes from the previous year, or are you making new ones?
Oh, so our Nutcracker was so expensive to make. We are never getting a new one. So those costumes were made a couple of years ago, and you will be seeing those probably for the rest of all of our lives. So we use that same one every year. Yeah, I mean that was so expensive. Yeah. Okay, Andy.
I was just curious if these tutus are hundreds of pieces connected, or are they like one piece folded around, or?
Oh yeah, it's all one piece. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So each layer is its own piece, and I actually brought a chart that I can show you later that is of how I figure out how each layer goes
so they're
in.
like folded and then the folds are stitched to stay, or how do you get?
Oh, okay. So so we cut long strips, right, and we seam them together, and we run one long gathering stitch that's like, I don't know, 30 meters long or something, and then we gather it, and then we press it, and then we sew it to the thing. So it's all one piece. There are some companies that actually there used to be, that this doesn't exist anymore because no one has the money for this, but there are some companies that used to hand pleat it onto the thing. We used to go like that. Yeah, we don't do that, we just pull it. And I would love to do that again, but no one has any money.
You had mentioned that you and your team members aren't the people behind stage during the performances, it's the wardrobe.
The wardrobe crew, yeah.
So the wardrobe crew are also seamstresses and people who
Yes,
can
yes.
to repair things on the spot. And
Yeah. So during, when we're building a show, they come into the shop and they're like a normal team like us. They have their Draper, Heather, and their assistant Ezra, who's a first hand like me. And then when the show opens, they move to the theater with the costumes and keep track of them. I'm so glad that's not my job.
do they ever come back from a performance and you say like, what the heck did this wardrobe person do? Do they different skills than you or different ways of doing things? Or maybe because it's on the fly and they had to do it so quickly?
There are some moments like that. I think mostly what happens is you're like, oh my god, this used to have a whole other layer to it. What happened? And they're like, yeah, ooh. And also the other thing that I can't do that, I'm sorry. The other thing that happens is we fit everything at the shop. And so we're like, so-and-so's wearing this one, so-and-so's wearing this one, so-and-so's wearing this one, set. At the theater, so-and-so breaks her ankle, the whole thing is thrown out of whack. So that's actually mostly what happens, is we're like, she ended up wearing that! Like, she must have looked like too short, oh my god. So, Mumsy.
Yeah, so going back to the question about education, are there people in the pipe? I mean, this is a professional thing, right? So people are coming along to get these jobs, or are they?
No one is coming to get these jobs. Yes, this is actually a huge problem because you have to have the skills of an engineer or a surgeon to have these jobs, but people want to pay you nothing. Pay nothing. So I'm trying to get interns in to help them, because You know, it's about your personality, you know? Like, it could be anyone who has, like, the aptitude for this, right? But no one wants to stick with it because it's grueling and the pay is terrible.
How terrible.
Oh, it's pretty bad. We can talk after. If anyone has any money, by the way. We can make really beautiful costumes for anyone. Any other questions? Oh, yes.
Do you often find issues between makeup and the costumes, like it ever getting onto the costumes, or what do you do in those situations?
Actually, that's a great question because ballet has this thing where they will actually, like, when they put this costume on, they will, once they see the straps on themselves, they will just put their makeup, their ballerina pancake makeup right over the straps, and we're like, wait. So actually this is, oh, and this goes back to your question about technology. This is actually new elastic that we got that's almost sheer on the body. So we're hoping to alleviate some of that, but it's still a problem. It's hard to clean. Yes?
You want to talk about the designers whose costumes you made. Tell us about ballet costume designers.
Well, to be totally frank with you, they really are not around much at all. The one that I've had the most interaction with is Robert Perziola, who made Nutcracker and also our new Swan Lake. And he's great, you know. He's a really talented man. He makes beautiful drawings. He's completely insane and should probably have that checked, but he's really fun to work with. But yeah, I mean, most of these people, we almost never see them. You know, they come in, usually they give our dyer a hard time. They come in and they're like, is this going to be the right color? And he's like, yeah, calm down. And then it is, and you know, and sometimes they come to a few fittings, but I mean, it's very different, actually, I find, because before this I worked a lot in opera and in regular theater, and the designers are always around in that. But for this, usually you're dealing with a choreographer who's like, why can't I see her ribbons? And you're like, I don't know. Because her skirt is long?
Are the designers employed by the Boston Ballet, or are they independent contractors who might work for lots of different
Yeah, they're
companies?
independent contractors. The ballet, the 12 full-time staff in the costume shop and wardrobe we're not designers, we're the only. All right.